Now I want to take another look at the HMIs as you'll be working with more of these. Let's go from your PLC to an HMI. NA50 is just a model line. And now we're in the configuration. You've got a couple screens of the HMI, configuration and setup, which is all the technical data, setup, Ethernet address, device references, etc., and variable mapping. HMI is a section where you do your program. But first, you got to be able to communicate with it. Device references tells you what PLCs it will talk to or it has links to. So you can sometimes add a second PLC in here. There's one of the prompt screens. If you click OK too many times, it'll actually add your PLC in here twice, and one will be sitting here with a big red X, and then your HMI won't work. So these device references are which PLCs it is connected to. Now, we talked about variables before, but under HMI settings, these are all the base parameters, the TCP/IP address. Here's a handy one. On the very first screen, scroll down. You always want to turn off alarm notification, because when it has some kind of an error, if it can't communicate with the PLC, if it has some variable it can't talk to or connect with, it'll set off the beeper on the HMI, which is really annoying. So this will be the default. You've always got to uncheck that. And then when you transfer this program to the HMI, this is written into it. So there's other settings, but we're not going to be using FTP, NTP transfers. We're strictly dealing with TCP/IP. So here you've set the address. You can also set this address from the screen of the HMI. If you tap in the bottom right corner, it brings up some configuration menus, and you can force a certain IP address into it. By default, you would take it out of the box, connect, because it does have a USB port, but the way our simulators are set up in the lab, we don't have a USB cable into it. So the easy way is go to the configuration screen and just punch in an IP address, and then you can communicate with it for your program. Security settings are if you have to set up user accounts. Now, an HMI can be just for an operator on a machine. You give them certain menus, start, stop, alarms, messages, counts, and stuff like that. But if you have to go in and do some higher level settings on a machine or in a PLC, you would put a password on it, and you would create an account in here, and they have different roles. There's roles as administrator where they have godlike privileges. They can do anything. You could create a user level, and this could be something. You could create an account called maintenance, and then you could give it level 1 and level 2. And then when you can create certain configuration pages on your HMI, which only the maintenance people can access. And otherwise, the general one would just be an operator. But to get to those setup screens on the HMI where you can set parameters on this machine, you would have to log in as maintenance, and you would then set a password for this. So up here, you would have a user. You can add a user, Bob, and then you would give Bob a password, and then you would give Bob a role of maintenance. So Bob would log in, you would put in his password, and then he would get access to level 1, level 2 security on the HMI. When you create new pages on the HMI, you will assign a security level to them. So only certain people can access those pages. This is just an overview. We may or may not get into this until the advanced course, but that's what it's all about. So security settings, that's about it for those. And so generally what you do is you would expand HMI, and under Pages, you will bring up whatever screens you've created. And again, you can click on an object and right-click and go Properties. And that's off screen, so I'll just bring that over. And what you can do then is you see the name of that object. What is it? It's a momentary button. The appearance, the rectangle, give it a name when the button is not pushed. You can have a text string, and if the button is pushed, you can provide a different name to it. You can set the font, pitch, the type of font that the label's on. You can center it, put it top left. There's different options for that. If you press the down arrow button, you can wrap the words, change the color of the text when the button's up, change the color of the text when the button is down, change the background color when the button is not pushed or up, change the background color of the button when the button is pushed down, borders, etc. And then down here under behavior, you give it a variable name. And the variable name that you give has to be connected to a variable in the PLC. So that's where we go up under Configuration and Setup, and you open Variable Mapping. This takes a minute on this program. Do it again. Okay, so under Variable Mapping, here is your HMI, its address, and you expand here. System variables are the HMI's operation, not what we deal with. And you expand user variables. This is where the variables in the PLC are linked to the variables in your HMI. And you can scroll down and you can see that the variable on our HMI screen is called sensor A. Since this is the list of inputs, outputs, and variables in the PLC, you can see all the hard inputs and outputs, push buttons, outputs. There's a variable in the PLC program called sensor A. We type that name in here, and that links the two of them. Now, when you transfer this program to the HMI, and it'll then reboot, come up, if you should be able to push the button on page 0, and then if you go to the HMI program, and you had a thing called sensor A. There it is in our drop-down list. Always pick it from the drop-down list. So, and then you transfer this program to the PLC. Transfer both HMI program and PLC program. Put the PLC into run mode. Make sure it's in run mode. Go online. And when you push the button on the HMI, this should close. And that's what you're linking. If I go back to variable mapping, we're back in the HMI. Different screens are open here. If I look at a program, it's on the PLC. There's my PLC name. If I go back to the variable mapping, it pops me to the HMI. And so this is where you check. These names do not have to be the same. You can have a different name. And again, sometimes it's good to prefix or suffix the HMI variables with an identifier, like a capital H underscore sensor A. You could do that because in reality, you might be troubleshooting a program not realizing that sensor A is not a sensor on an input. It's actually an input on the HMI. It's not a real sensor. It's a software sensor. So you might want to identify all those. Anybody you're working with will have standards set up for that you would have to conform to. There are also under data, global variables, and this will list all the variables in the HMI that you're using. And again, these will then go back and appear. These are the ones in the HMI. AT is what PLC are these variables on that you're communicating with. There's my PLC name, home_sim, and that's what the AT map is. All the PLCs in a factory aren't going to be on the same Ethernet. So you may be able to send signals from your HMI to more than one PLC. So if you have a variable, it will have a PLC name and then a variable name in the PLC that you're talking to. That goes back to variable mapping. Right now, we're only showing the variables and inputs and outputs on our PLC home_sim. And then they wouldn't be identified. You might see a whole lot of other ones here to choose from, but they could be on a different PLC. So this tells you what PLC they're on. There are other settings, the update rate, half a second, 500 milliseconds. So it's not, as PLCs go, it's not fast. But the HMI is basically something just for humans to use, human-machine interface. So the speed, we don't work nearly as fast as machines do, so the speed isn't all that critical. But that's a spot to check. So when you get your program going, make sure that these references are in here, make sure that the variable mapping, that they're connected, make sure that you've transferred your program to the HMI, and then in your program on the computer, make sure that you've transferred the PLC program to the PLC and that it's in run mode. Then you can start pushing buttons on the HMI and seeing them work on the PLC screen. One other thing you can do when you're trying to connect your variables in the variable mapping, you've created a variable on the HMI screen and you're trying to make it sure it's connected to the one in your PLC, you can give the variable name, click on the plus sign. It's saying add a global variable. So you've done that, sensor A, data type, Boolean. Map it to the controller variable. Now, what it does, it displays the variable name in the HMI and say, here's your controller, home_sim. The variable name it found there is called sensor A, and it's also Boolean. You can click this, add or update. So this refreshes the link. And then when you go back and you retransfer this, then it works. That sometimes solves some connection issues. You do that. You still have the build button. And what happened was here under user accounts, I created that user maintenance and Bob, but I didn't give Bob a password. It's going, no, you can't do anything with that. So I'd have to go back into security settings here and say, oh, there's Bob. So sorry, Bob. We have to get rid of Bob. And so I can highlight Bob. Bob got thrown under the bus. I can get rid of the maintenance role. Cutbacks. Got to cut back. And now if I go back to my page and I hit build, oh, look, the error is gone. So any little detail like that. Sometimes one error can cause 5 or 6 errors to be listed, one mistake somewhere. And you clean up one detail and all the errors will go away, or 3/4 of them. So you solve them one at a time. Again, warnings don't stop it from running. It's just giving you, say, hey, pay attention to this. This could be a problem.